Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to the Reimagine Next, the Future of BFSI Virtual Summit organized by ETBFSI and Microsoft. The COVID pandemic has led to a paradigm shift in the way technology is adopted. Today, we are joined by industry experts to discuss and deliberate on technological disruptions, creating new customer expectations and new opportunities, shaping a new landscape in the BFSI sector. To start with, I would like to invite Amol Dete, editor ETBFSI, for a welcome address. Over to you, Amol.
Thank you so much, Aini. Dear participants, delegates, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me tell you, this is going to be a quick and a very comprehensive interaction where we are going to discuss various aspects of the customer experience. As we understand, the BFSI companies adopted digital far more aggressively, but in the last 2 years, they crossed all the limits of adoption because the whole world went virtual. And now we are not just talking about the digital adoption, but adding different layers to it. And in fact, BFSI companies are now working hard to adopt something like hyper-personalization. They just don't want to service the customer, but by using the machine learning data and more importantly, the predictive analytics, they want to actually let customer know that the company already knows perhaps what he would like to have, whether he wants to go for an auto loan or a home loan, or he wants to go for a particular kind of an insurance policy. So at ETBFSI, we have been covering different aspects on our portal, and we always believe to engage customers, readers, different way of curating content is far more important. And that's why we have been doing a lot of webinars, conclaves, where we invite industry speakers and discuss the burning issues of the industry, the trending issues of the industry in far more meaningful manner. Today, continuing the same efforts, curating content in different format, we have this particular virtual session based on a title, Reimagine Next, the Future of BFSI. And I'm going to have two important speakers with me from the BFSI sector and also IT expert who will give a meaningful insights here. So I would like you to stay tuned for this wonderful discussion and also one or two presentations here, which will talk about the various aspects of the customer experience. So stay tuned to Reimagine Next, the Future of BFSI.
Thank you, Amol, for kickstarting the event. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next is a panel discussion on delighting customers. This session will focus on technological disruptions, creating new customer expectations, and new opportunities shaping a new landscape in the BFSI sector. I would like to welcome our moderator, Amol Dete, editor, ETBFSI. It's my pleasure to invite the co-panelists, Mr. Anup Rao, MD and CEO, Future Generali India Insurance, Ms. Chama Fernandez, MD and CEO of North Arc Capital, Mr. Vijayant Rai, Country Leader, BFSI Segment, Microsoft India. Over to you, Amol. Please take the discussion ahead.
Thank you once again, Aini. And ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned. I will try my best, to get remarkable insights from the speakers that I have with me. Thank you, Aini, for introducing them to the audience. I think I'm going to get a little bit confused between Mr. Anup Rao and Vijayant Rai. The surname looks kind of similar. And Dr. Fernandez, glad to have you. I think I have also had an opportunity to moderate the panel where you're one of the speaker almost a year back. So glad to have all of you here. And since we are going to discuss the various aspects of the customer experience, the customer delight, or the delighting customers, that's what the BFSI companies are talking about. I have a common question, and then I will get into the specific question. So let me go ahead with a common question first for all of you. So Mr. Rao, Ms. Fernandez, and Mr. Rai, I have this common question for all of you, and I will start with you, Anu. The question is, when you speak about the customer experience, what is it that the BFSI companies are talking about these days, specifically in customer experience, and what, according to you, is the customer delight?
Hi, everyone, and hi, Amol, and thanks for having me over. So, quickly to just answer your question. So, I'll have to just retrace the steps back a little. I think customer delight has to first start with customer proposition in the first place. And, the reality of our industry is that we are very staid, very boring. And that's the way we have been. So, and while some of these things are important in the sense that, when we talk about insurance, especially on the life side, we talk about tax benefits. On the general side, when we talk about health, we talk about tax benefits. We talk about motor, there's a mandatory aspect to it, which is third party. So I think somewhere the industry at some stage has gotten comfortable with the fact that, there is this demand which will come through for these reasons. The market will continue to grow at a certain rate, and therefore you'll be able to attach your products to sale of motor vehicles as the population grows up, as people reach a particular age and want health and life. But what digitization does is that, to get a proposition out there in a way and form wherein we talk about the product, not just what the peripheral benefits are. And unfortunately, for a lot of the industry, focusing on tax and peripheral benefits has what's been used to drive communication and sales both. So while that is important, I repeat, I think these tax benefits and these breaks are important. The fact that, our ability to get the proposition out to the customer has been limited. And I think the digital ecosystem makes it possible for us to do that in a more efficient way. I think there's lesser transmission loss. You leave it to the customer to actually flesh more layers out and investigate this further. You're able to respond to customer in real time, so on and so forth. Secondly, if the customer, when you're talking about delight, and I think proposition is 80%, but the remaining 20% is obviously, you can seamlessly onboard the customer. There's greater transparency. I think there's also this element about having products for dummies in the sense that you're able to dumb down communication. I'll just give you one example. If you look at the way a policy document looked about 5-6 years back to the way it looks today, there's a world of difference. Nobody could understand the document 6 years back, for instance. But my singular point would be that on proposition, and I think digitization or the digital ecosystem makes it possible for us to do a better job of communicating that to our customers.
Actually, in fact, a very bold statement, Sanup. I think it's good to begin with. And I still remember, almost 10 years back when I started reporting on insurance, I also obtained a handbook of insurance, It was kind of a dictionary for me to understand what does it mean, right? Whether the redemption or the reputation or, the ULIP and all other things. But good to have you and understanding, more from you. Let me shift my focus to Ms. Fernandez and understand more about the NBFCs and the lending front. She has been dealing with a lot of fintechs and whole NBFC 6 ecosystem. So, Ms. Fernandez, I would like to have your version of customer delight.
That's right. I grew up reading about customer is king and all of that. And, that's kind of, something that one pretty much accepts as, absolute, requirement. However, when it comes to BFSI, and I'm talking particularly, finance, lending, credit, insurance, and so on, finance is serious business, in the sense that a decision that goes wrong from a financial perspective can have very, very long-term consequences for your clients. So, for example, selling the wrong insurance product, selling the wrong credit product, and so on can have really serious consequences. So when one talks about customer delight from a BFSI angle, I feel the responsibility is a lot more than momentary gratification that comes out of doing a lot of cool technological things, So, the point I'm really making is that there is a lot happening today. Technology can be used in many, many ways to really sort of give the best to customers. But I think it's important to realize that what we give by way of customer delight goes beyond that immediate interface, as it were. And to my mind, there is a lot more thinking that needs to be done around what is the right product, what is the right suitability, how is this going to impact the customer in the long term, and so on and so forth. And technology today really gives us a very, very deep insights into how might we provide those products and services to the customer that enables them to manage their financial lives a lot better than it did in the past. So I think that's kind of really the distinction I'm making here. Secondly, customer delight has to be weaved around the core product and services, right? So for example, if I said the core is credit and it's a business loan that the customer is seeking, then everything from excess convenience and product features must be designed to give the customer the best value and the best experience in terms of that. However, I would like to make a distinction between the core product and the experience of availing the product. The two are increasingly getting integrated, and that's the point I was making, to say that the experience must be good. The core product is absolutely the fundamental on which the entire BFSI space depends. And today technology is in such a good position to design that core product as well as the interface in a big way. And I think that's really what we're going to see in a big way in terms of some of the development that will come into this space. And I think that's really what one wants to see, right? When the customer is delighted, when you've given a product that is the right appropriate product in terms of tenor, pricing, requirement, and so on and so forth, in a manner in which it gets delivered, seamlessly using technology, easy to use, all of that stuff. I'm just reiterating my point again. We need to understand what is the core product and make sure that there is where a lot of the focus in terms of design, technology, and so on and so forth happens, while also ensuring that the delivery is done seamlessly using the best, experience possible.
Noted your points, Mr. Fernandez, and I think we'll discuss more about how technology is actually helping BFSI companies. But I have a tech expert here, Vijayant from Microsoft. Vijayant, I would like to have your views also. I'm sure most of the BFSI companies, having an interaction with you in terms of customer experience. So would like to have your version of customer delight, Vijayant.
Thanks, Amol, and thanks for having me. I mean, when we look at customer delight, and like you mentioned, we work at different facets with different set of customers. I'm primarily responsible for the banking and financial relationships we have in the country. And I think when we look at customer delight, I guess the few things we want to probably look at, which are probably the biggest factors in delighting customers, is sort of trying to meet those needs which are unmet at this point of time, changing. And constantly changing at this point of time, and are new, right? So I mean, if you're able to probably look at those dimensions and you start talking to things which are sort of even forward-looking and bring them into the paradigm, that's probably when you start seeing customers being truly delighted. From a banking perspective, and you look at Microsoft, and one of the biggest themes we've been working with all our banking and finance customers within the past couple of years is trying to deliver this theme of differentiated customer experience. So what can our customers do to delight their customers? How can they deliver those differentiated customer experiences, etc. And the key thing has been around sort of reimagining and redesigning all their sales, service, marketing engines with which they engage customers. And like you said in your initial remarks, the past 18 months with the pandemic around here has sort of seriously accelerated the whole digital acceleration which we've seen in the industry. Just a massive amount of need to make it happen has happened. So basically, if you look at it, it's less physical out there. At a time point, maybe if you look back, about a year ago, it was almost no physical for our banks and financial institutions in terms of how they interacted with their customers. It forced a lot of digital to happen. And what's happened after that is that a lot of those things have become permanent. So, I mean, you have chatbot frameworks doing things which were earlier being done by people interacting with, say, customers or, from a service standpoint or sales standpoint. A whole lot of those things have now become sort of, an expected standard in terms of delivering that. And then the other aspect is that, the end user, the whole world of what they're experiencing with fintechs and other, consumer technologies and applications is what they expect now from financial services organizations as well. So that's what's changing in terms of what needs to be done. And the good news is that, like you mentioned, banks have really accelerated, banks and financial services organizations have really accelerated the journey of sort of redefining and reimagining pretty much all their sales service engines.
Right. Meaningful one from all of you. I think great opening remarks here. Good perspective. So let me get into some specific questions, and Anup, I will come back to you. On the InsurTech front, I will ask you maybe something specific very soon. But when I was going through, the website of Lemonade, which is an UK-based insure company, the UI and UX of that particular portal is so amazing. They're saying that you can buy the policy in 30 seconds and we disburse the claims in 3 minutes. I don't know how much is the truth, but this looks so attractive. And now we have started a seamless journey or a less complex products in the insurance. And I can see that a lot of insurance companies are making hard efforts to make the product seamless, simplify and everything. One, how difficult it is for you to craft simple products to make people understand the insurance in a far more seamless manner, because at the same time the generation which is evolving, 2.0 generation, which we can call it, they have evolving demands. They want everything seamless, they want everything like a Swiggy or a Zomato.
So I think that's a great question. And so Amol, if you look at Lemonade, Lemonade did make a splash with its UI and UX. They didn't make it very ridiculously easy for customers to buy a product and to raise a claim. You're absolutely right. Over a period of time, the novelty of that product has waned. It is not. It's not as celebrated as it was earlier. But leave that aside. The fact is that yes, they did make you wrong. I think it's extremely important. I mean, forget about Lemonade. I mean, you look at a Netflix and an Amazon. One of them has superior interface to the other. I mean, and everyone knows Netflix has better interface compared to Amazon. It's more user friendly. It's more expensive, but the fact is, Amazon finds it hard to compete. Paradoxically, Amazon interface is what makes it more successful as far as e-commerce is concerned. But somewhere they're not able to replicate that when it comes to streaming services. So I think UI UX is extremely important. There's no question about it. And I think that again goes back to my earlier point. What is a quick proposition you're going to make a customer and get them on board? How quickly can you do that? How soon can you do it? Again, the fact is that the way we go about it is fairly clunky, fairly clumsy. Part of it also has to do with the fact that we are a regulated industry. So there's a lot of data which is required to be captured, at least for example, on the motor side. You get the engine number, the chassis number, the registration number. So, even if you're able to extract some of the data through a Vahan or any of those, it's not always complete. It also requires some kind of compliance with the customer, reconfirming that they want to go through the transaction, so on and so forth. But I couldn't agree more that that the UI UX thing is extremely important. There's no question about it. Now that also boils down to a second point, and the second point is that today the truth is that insurers sometimes don't understand the risk as much as people who own the customers do. So, for instance, in many cases, Google has better algorithms to predict what kind of risk you're underwriting compared to what insurance companies have. Now, what does that really mean? It really means that over a period of time, the balance of power is going to shift to people who have access to customer behavior, information, and data. Now, I think the ability of a company to get better quality UI UX is also contingent on ML and AI and how well you deploy that across your organization. And I think that is happening. So you talk about Lemonade, and then I think we'll find Lemonade-esque successes being replicated everywhere. And we have seen that. We have seen that, that at some stage, UI UX is a lot like tracking and branding, and it could be the key reason why somebody pivots from one brand to another.
Okay, noted your points. Ms. Fernandez, let me come back to you. I think your point was valid when you said in opening remarks that core is very important, but the kind of credit demand which has in the country, the rise of the NBFCs that we are seeing and the collaboration with the fintechs. I mean, I will come back to you on a fintech front, but the idea is such now that the new age customers maybe wants to go to a mobile shop, look at the iPhone, and he wants to buy an iPhone and quickly, a loan as well. He want, to be delivered to the merchant at the same time. He wants to go to a motor shop, a showroom, and wants to buy a car immediately. He wants loan to be disbursed then and then only, right? How difficult it is, because at one point, like Anup said, you have to tick some boxes because ultimately you're a regulated industry. On your front, you have to also see whether the due diligence has been done. Maybe you can access the CIBIL score immediately. But how tough it is to provide this kind of customer experience, which has been evolving rapidly.
Yeah, no, a very, very, very good question. And I would say it's been a journey. There have been some NBFCs who kind of got into this entire digital journey very early in the day. There have been some who are sort of in the process of it, and there are some who are far away. Clearly, the ones who are more recent in starting their journey in the BFSI space have had the advantage of starting in a world that's very, very different. I think the challenges have been for large businesses that existed in a very different world where data, customer behavior, customer expectations were very, very different. And I think they have had the challenging task of almost reinventing themselves. This said, I think there is also the advantage that they have had of long data series, long experience with customers, and things they could actually, in some sense, capitalize in a very different manner once they had access to this entire digital framework. So the point I'm making is that, of course, customers will expect more. I mean, I came across this, this information about a food restaurant that was like eat first and pay later. So it's going to get more and more sort of, towards what a customer wants. But the point I'm really trying to make is that it is important while on the one hand, one caters to the immediate requirements of the market, the customers, competition, and so on and so forth, particularly for regulated sectors, regulated industry, to really start building core businesses, start building core technology foundations that will really last a lifetime. That's the way one would sort of look at it. And I just want to sort of talk about a few things that I believe that have strengthened the NBFC sector and will, in some sense, transform the credit segment. If you look at sort of just credit, right, and that's what Northern Arc does, and that's something that we understand well. I mean, there are just 3 or 4 things that one looks at, right? It's customer acquisition, it's credit appraisal, it's repayments and collections, and all of these have been significantly transformed by technology today. Technology allows us to do this in a superbly efficient and reliable manner. And at some level, I think the obvious customer acquisition, credit underwriting, and so on and so forth is quite well understood, to say that these are opportunities for the business to sort of explore, grow faster, and so on and so forth. I just want to throw a light on a few things that don't really sort of come to mind when one talks about, the digital transformation and what technology has done. I think one important thing, and particularly as one talks about building businesses for the long run, is the impact that technology has had on governance, data, and reporting. Because if you look at it sort of at the core, finance is a trust and integrity business. These are the core components of building good quality financial companies. And I think the ability to really be fully transparent and accountable to key stakeholders today is so much better with technology. And I think that's really one focus area that one would want to look at in terms of building really, really strong credit businesses or financial businesses for that matter. So, for example, how is data stored? What kind of information is available to stakeholders? And I'm talking stakeholders of all sorts. I'm talking lenders, I'm talking equity holders, I'm talking clients, I'm talking audit firms, I'm talking regulators, and so on and so forth. I think data puts us at a level in a finance company where we are today a lot more confident about what is going on inside, and we can see and understand a lot more just simply because digitization, the way the technology has moved, allows us to capture a lot of that information, analyze it, and look at it not just from a business customer acquisition perspective, but from the perspective of building a strong, robust, solid business that will run, last for the long run. So I'm really sort of making the point here to say that there is an angle to what digitization has done to companies, which is the whole governance and reporting angle, which doesn't get spoken about as much as many of the other things. But I think this is a very, very important upside of what has really happened in terms of the NBFC space. The second thing, of course, is just simply access to capital. NBFCs have, or the banking system, the NBFC system in India has over a period of time gotten better and better in terms of access to capital. I'm talking about both access to debt capital as well as access to equity capital, clients as well as institutions. And I feel the more we get on that entire technology, the ability to really sort of go threadbare in terms of information, performance, reporting, and so on and so forth, I think access to capital over a period of time is also going to get better. So it's almost like sort of a fallout of it, but a very, very important fallout of it. And of course, and beyond doubt, opportunities for expansion, that entire shift from looking at an opportunity from a competition perspective to a collaboration perspective. I think that sort of is a big transformation that one sees today, which wouldn't have been possible in a world that was not so strong and digitally forward looking. And I think these are some of the things as BFI sector, I think that one would sort of drill down and look at as one builds businesses for the long run.
Okay, a detailed one, Ms. Fernandez, and let me come back to Vijayant, specific around the digital front. So Vijayant, initially it all started, to make operations seamless, but now it's all about providing a greater experience to the customer. So how do you think the BFSI companies are transitioning with digital to enhance their customer experience? What are your case studies here? What are your experience here?
No, great question there, Amol. Few things here, and what we've seen in the recent experience we've had over the past couple of years, specifically with the acceleration of digital, which has been happening. One is, organizations, especially banking, financial services organizations, looked at inwards, basically seeing how could they, for example, ensure that their own employee base was actually coming to speed in terms of working in a hybrid mode, for example, had the tools and ability to collaborate with their customers in a digital fashion. So I mean, we've seen a lot of organizations sort of upskilling themselves in terms of the tools they had for collaboration, ensuring that they have the ability to work remotely. The security aspect, extremely critical. As financial services organizations started working in a hybrid mode, how do you actually do this in a secure fashion? As you deal with customers, working from home or from remote locations, etc. So there was a lot of work which happened in what we call as employee experience. We saw organizations, taking it to the next level in terms of equipping their employees to sort of, innovate and give them the tools and the security to operate in that fashion. So that was one big transition we saw, as digital accelerated. Second, we talked about the customer side of things, where had organizations ensuring that they are dealing with customers, they're reaching out to customers in a far more digital fashion, far more less physical mode, and very effectively. I mean, basically that sort of set up the base for the next level of transformation from a digital perspective. Third key aspect was data. Right. I mean, organizations realize the amount of data they already have, which they can monetize. They realize that you have technologies today which you can use and leverage for creating even better products, for example, for even better decision making, analytics, which you could do with that. And we are working with some of the largest financial services organizations and banks today in terms of helping them run their data lakes, in terms of their analytics engines which they create there. And massive amount of experience coming through. We're looking at organizations which are now trying to, for example, the concept of, say, a data supply chain. We're working with some very large banks today who are trying to bring in data from all their different sources, silos which they had earlier, into say, for example, a data lake, and then come back with scenarios for cross-sell, upsell, all kinds of things there. So essentially, what we're seeing is today, across employees, across your customers, and then you look at areas like data, which is completely exploding in terms of the opportunities which financial services organizations are finding and what they can do with data. The other aspect is automation. One big gain, which we've seen over the past couple of years is folks have realized, our customers have realized that they can use technology for automating processes. They can use, for example, cognitive abilities. They can use, AI, ML, low code, no code platforms to actually, completely automate a whole bunch of processes which were earlier, done very manually. And then finally, I think one very interesting concept which is coming through is that of a citizen developer. We are seeing even very large public sector customers of ours, banks, who are actually using some of our products to develop, applications using low code, no code platforms on their own, and basically taking care of certain business requirements, just by doing it themselves. So a whole lot of self-service coming into the fore, both from an internal perspective of customers doing it themselves, but at the same time giving that ability to their customers as well. So very, very exciting, transitions which we've seen.
Okay, thanks for giving those highlights about low code, no code, and the seamless transactions happening there and different demands. So Anup, let me come back to you. I remember long back In fact, IRDA had suggested insurance companies to set up different distribution chains, and they can sell their policies through, in fact, merchants or the kirana stores. Maybe it didn't pick up then, but now everybody's talking about it. In fact, fintechs, insurtechs have also got into it. So my quick question here is, we have seen enough disruptions in the whole BFSI sector. So what kind of disruptions do you see specifically in the way of distribution going ahead in insurance sector?
So I think the nature of disruption is that, we don't even know where the disruption is going to come from. So I don't think the movie industry ever expected that, or theater owners ever expected that, eventually the consumer would watch a movie at a time and place of her choosing, at home. So I think that's the nature of disruption. But there is one point I would make, which is not directly related to your question. I think what disruption, I believe the next big opportunity is actually to address digital fatigue. Let me explain what I mean by that. The fact is that all of us struggle to remember so many usernames and passwords. At least I do. Most people, and this entire digital thing has led to a situation where there's a lot of onus on the customer to do a lot of research, to actually take responsibility completely and decide on what is better and what is not, what is good, what is not so good. I think a lot of us miss that ability to not make certain decisions, wherein you can delegate those decisions to somebody else, pay that guy some money and say that, look, hey, you're the agent, you're the distributor, you're the intermediary. Unfortunately, what's happened is digitization also led to disintegration in a lot of ways, or it's moved the decision making, and I would call it not the freedom, but the decision making pressure to the customer. In my opinion, I think disruption will really come when somebody can ease this bandwidth of a customer, and I think the struggle's only gone up over the last 2 years. I mean, everything is self-service right now. I mean, if somebody's come to a society, it's MyGate, which sends you a notification. You got to check who's coming, and then you say yes or no. Yeah. When it comes to bank accounts, you got to deal with multiple things. You manage your own insurance policies. You put them in a e-locker. I mean, on social media, you don't remember. You're just perpetually logged in. You don't remember and it's happened to a lot of people I know. If you're logged out of your account, if you change your device, you don't even know what your damn password is. I mean, you're really struggling. In case you change your Apple phone, most of us end up going to an Apple store, though we know technically what the process is to recover data and back it up. The fact is, you just give it to some kid and say that, listen, boss, you just do this. I think really disruption, in my opinion, the opportunity is to make sure that somewhere we get that bandwidth back, that mental bandwidth back. Right. To me, that is the opportunity for tech companies to help us, to move us away from tech in some ways.
Yeah, I think more importantly, we need a robot to remind us our user IDs and passwords, because we have so many of them and it keeps changing.
It's not just that. I mean, the fact is that the human mind is not designed to make so many decisions. It creates decision fatigue, and it affects the quality of work and life elsewhere with the number of decisions you're making every single day. Yeah. I mean, you have enough on your mind, and then a lot of things which you had normally delegated 10 years back, those are not decisions which. And frankly, at some stage, we have to decide that, see, human beings, I read this fascinating book by Scott Adams. I think it's called How to Lose at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. I think that's the name of the book. But he talks about the fact that there are two kinds of people, maximizers and optimizers. Right. Maximizers try to get more out of the day. But I think we have crossed that threshold way back, that we've gone to a level where we are just doing way more than we are equipped to do. Yeah. And that explains lack of attention span, lack of patience. Reading as a habit has dropped. A lot of people can't get through a book in a couple of days. It takes us a week to get through it. Even videos more than 5-6 minutes, you're tired of it. You're hey, why doesn't this guy get to the point quickly? So on and so forth. So I think that's also linked to decision fatigue in some ways. Right. And with so much more to do for all of us.
True. Very, very valid points. Anup, Ms. Fernandez, I will also take your perspective in terms of disruptions from your sector. So what kind of disruptions do you see? We have seen already enough, but what else can we see now, or what else do you see?
That's right. So let me just talk, sort of from a credit perspective, right? And I completely agree that there is digital fatigue happening, and it can just tend to completely get exhausting. I think one of the things that we would like to see in the credit space is a lot more of use of data to design products and services that are at some level very, very customized. And technology really allows us to do that, right? So let me just give you an example of what we've done at Northern Arc. Today, our platform called Nimbus is end-to-end ready to deliver a 100 rupee product or a 10 crore product. That entire range is possible just simply because there are different underlying models that are operating to cater to different types of clients, different types of sectors, different types of underlying risks, and so on. What if we could do this at an individual level, right? So I think that's really the big disruption I'm looking at happening in the Indian market and in the credit space in general, where there is so much of data that's available across multiple players in the market today that I could pick a name, I could take a client, I could build a history, and I could deliver a product that is absolutely a customized product for the need of that individual. This could be in terms of tenors, this could be in terms of nature of the underlying security, this could be more importantly in terms of pricing. So, sort of a risk-based pricing product at an individual level. I think that is going to be absolutely disruptive. I'm not saying it's happening in bits and pieces, but technology allows us to do this at a very, very different level. So if one could marry the entire concept of individual credit underwriting and appropriateness of a product, I think that would be the next big disruption that I'm seeing in the credit space. Really, to sort of put this in a slightly more clearer manner, I would say that data allows us to evaluate, is this underlying client credit worthy or not? I think the next level would be to say that if this client is credit worthy, what are the various other data points around this client that I can sort of look at and design a product that is customized only for this client? It sounds very simple. It is not. And my sense is really, as all of us start getting to a level where multiple organizations start collaborating, there is data sharing, there's a lot more information out there in the space, and it's already happening. We will start seeing this happening. And to my mind, that's the next big disruption, where there is no one size fits all. There is a lot of customization and appropriateness that comes in the way the products are being designed at an individual level. That's really the next, in my opinion, the next leg of our journey on the digital side, at least, as far as credit is concerned.
True. I think, again, meaningful thoughts there. I think every customer is different, and that's where, the BFSI companies will go for. So let me add here more on the tech side. And Vijayan, to be very specific, then do you mind sharing, according to you, what are the emerging technologies that you think BFSI companies will adopt, or, how the companies will also build up their business value by maybe adopting emerging technologies? I mean, everybody's talking about data analytics, machine learning, and now suddenly, the blockchain also came into the picture. But anything that you want to add here in terms of tech?
Sure, Amol. But before that, I want to tell Anup, completely resonate with the digital fatigue side of things, and just so much that we're doing in a day nowadays. Would love to get some of that back. If you look at that old Hindi song, "Dil dhoondta hai, fir wahi fursat ke raat din." I hope we get something back. But I mean, just coming back, Amol, to the subject on disruption, I think there are a couple of areas that, two ways you probably look at it. One is what we see as big disruptors in terms of industry trends out there, and second is in terms of the technology, part of it. Big disruptors, if you look at India itself, UPI, massive disruptor from a payment ecosystem perspective, and what it's done is just unbelievable. We believe the second big disruptor, from a system point of view, is already out there with account aggregator. With the Sahmati framework, we're doing a lot of work with account aggregator companies right now on different use cases which we're working on. So that from an industry perspective, I think are two massive, disruptions which are already in play. The second, from a tech perspective, data, and Dr. Fernandez talked about it. That's probably going to be the single largest, disruptor from a perspective of tech. As to what you can do with the data, it's pretty much limitless. When you move it to the cloud, the scale you get, what you get to work with, structured, unstructured data sets, the decisioning you can do on that. is just unbelievable. The kind of use cases we are now working, with partners in India and globally, across FSI, what you're seeing on data is just the potential is immense there. The other aspect, and I think this was touched upon as well, is security. As all of this is happening, security, risk, and compliance, we believe it will be the next area of massive disruption as well. The early warning systems, which we'll start seeing to come into play, would be of the next level. So, when I look at disruption, the tech side, security, both to ensure that the consumers, as they consume more and more digital, are able to do that in a very secure fashion. There's a lot of consolidation happening on the security side. So you'd probably see a lot of new technologies coming to the fore from a consumer point of view, and securing that piece, for financial services consumers, but also on the side of financial service organizations and the way they're looking at security. So massive amount of innovation and consolidation, which we probably see in security. So data security, probably two big tech disruptors. Industry, like I mentioned, we've already seen UPI and WhatsApp doing. Account aggregator as the next framework coming up.
Okay. Noted your points, and I think I will also ask participants if they have any questions. There are a couple of questions that I can see, but those are mostly the thoughts and not a specific question. So, dear participants, if you have any specific questions, please shoot it. But Anup, I will come back to you, and I will take one quick question with all of you. So, the question to you, Anup, is how do you see the partnerships with InsurTech will emerge going ahead? Because InsurTech companies are also going aggressive. They're doing customized products. Obviously, they're not the manufacturer of the customers, but I think they are kind of at least solving the distribution challenge in a far more seamless manner, which perhaps insurance companies could not do it earlier. And in the last 2 years, there is an uptick on that front. So how do you see the partnerships going ahead with the InsurTech companies?
I think they will work well. And I think any partnership, not just InsurTech, what they need, what do you need from a partner? You need the ability to get enough data on so that you can underwrite effectively. And like I had mentioned earlier, in a lot of cases, the intermediary or the person who's in possession of the customer details knows more about, has a greater precision with the risk he or she is underwriting compared to the manufacturer being the insurance companies. I think InsurTechs are in a position to do that well, and not just InsurTechs, but any tech firm which has access to customer data is in a position to do that very well, to kind of predict what kind, or study the behaviors and kind of predict what kind of risks one will have to underwrite. So I think that's a great opportunity, and it's limited to anyone who's able to track customers online. Now, some of this is a little creepy because while technology helps us with a lot of things, the process of digitization also has led to loss of privacy. Now, somewhere in a country like India, while we have some regulations, largely are left it to the largest of the companies not to abuse it. And I'm talking about big tech, for instance, not to abuse it. So while it's a little creepy, the fact is that we can probably do two things very well. One is hyper customized products. So if Amol wants a particular product, at a particular point in time, which he's not even aware that he requires, we can create that for him and give it to him on a particular day and time. And customize that. So hyper customization is something which I think will happen. So I think the industry will move away from the health and motor and move to non-health and non-motor, while we just talk about non-motor, which is health right now. And secondly, I still maintain, I think the value of techs, not just InsurTechs, is their ability to give meaningful, high quality data and improve our underwriting ability, and therefore, customize products for customers.
Okay. Ms. Fernandez, the same question, but I would like to add fintech replacing InsurTech here. How do you see the partnerships emerging? Because they're adding a great value to NBFCs in terms of the credit and the due diligence.
No, absolutely. So, this is really the point I was making at an earlier stage, that I think directionally what we are moving from is really sort of a world of competition to a world of collaboration. And in some sense, I'm really seeing each of these entities in the BFSI space, including, fintechs who do blending in particular, in plugging a piece of that puzzle. And as those pieces get plugged, we're going to see sort of an emergence of a far, far clearer picture as far as the underlying customer is concerned, and I see that sort of as a big direction that's kind of going forward. Clearly, there is a lot of interesting, innovative work that fintechs are doing. And to me, really sort of what is the most encouraging direction one sees on sort of the technology front is really the democratization of technology. Let me sort of say this in a slightly sort of elaborate manner. So if you look at the way things are progressing, right? You have natural language processing. We spoke about earlier about the low-code platforms, robotic process automation. And all of these sort of are in some sense democratizing technology, making really powerful capabilities that are available for all businesses of all scales. So you don't necessarily have to be a very large enterprise to be using some of these things and in some sense building businesses of some of these technologies. So that's one part, saying we've seen this in a lot of fintechs, right? We've seen the use of technology. We've seen small companies emerging and very quickly becoming large companies, large businesses. And really sort of that, to my mind, is what is really going on. Technology is becoming accessible. Use of technology for building businesses is becoming accessible. Scale really sort of is a matter of, how much thought, innovation, newness one brings to the table. The other thing I see in terms of the new age technology and the way it is really being used is creating a risk-free playground for innovation. What I'm really talking about is, companies can today, in the backdrop of technology, including a lot of fintechs, right? That's really what some of them are doing, which is basically exploring new product ideas, looking at possible future directions, a limitless exploration of what-if scenarios, in the financial space, using cutting-edge data analytics and modeling today is possible. Now, many of these experiments are not rocket science. None of this is really rocket science, although it does end up being made to appear very, very complex. What it really sort of is doing today is allowing us to play some of these possibilities out without actually having to roll them out on the ground and sort of create situations which are disastrous in nature. Ability to experiment is a lot more because we have data. Ability to really sort of implement and scale up is a lot more possible. And most importantly, the ability to pull back if things are not working out successfully in an environment which is supported by data and technology is like never before. So it's almost like fail fast. We try something out, there's data, technology, there's a direction that you're seeing, there are forecasts that are coming. If it works, great. If it doesn't, quickly shut it down, move on to the new idea. I think this is really the power of what we see that's coming out of the digital space. And I see a lot of the fintechs really adopting this approach. I think the possibilities are immense. And I do really want to say at this stage that this is not limited only to the fintechs. This is something that pretty much anybody can do. I'm seeing a lot of companies, banks, NBFCs today using technology in a very, very significant manner. There is so much of work going on at the back end in terms of data and so on and so forth. And as all of this sort of comes together, I see a huge transformation happening. And to my mind, that is really going to be very, very beneficial for the customer. We will see models that we couldn't envision, in the past, where the ability to really understand the nature of the customer, the behavior of the customer, and the requirements of the customer will absolutely be of a different magnitude.
Right. Noted your points. And let me come back to Vijayant again. We partly touched the data and security aspect, which is very, very critical, for all the BFSI companies. In fact, there is a question here, someone called Sri Kumaran is asking that more data and technology impose more exposure to cybersecurity threats. So do you want to add something to what you said sometime back on the security front in terms of how BFSI companies can, I won't say completely prevent, but, strengthen their security network, create more firewalls and, try to protect their customers? Is there any highlights, bullet points that you want to share?
So Amol, what the industry is talking about nowadays on security is what is called as a zero trust framework, right? Basically, I mean, you really don't trust pretty much nothing in the system, right from your identities to your devices. Everything goes through authentication. Data is siloed. So I mean, there is a whole method of doing this, and like I mentioned, it's called zero trust framework is what the industry works on. Because I mean, as this whole thing accelerates, if you look at it earlier, you could keep things in your office, keep them secure, lock and key, and all that. Now, we look at financial services organizations, they're all working from home, hybrid, everything was enabled in the past 18 months, as the pandemic happened. So as it's happened, I think what's also come through is, there is a framework available, there are technologies available which can enable, very secure remote working scenarios. And also from the consumer side, as to how the consumer looks at it, I think one big part which still needs to be addressed probably better is on the consumer education side of things. On security, or how do you actually look at things like phishing, and how do you secure different aspects of your own personal environments, etc. So what we can be sure of, that security threats will increase and increase manifold as digital increases. From a financial services perspective, these organizations have always been very cognizant of risk and compliance and security. And I can tell you, we're working with some of the largest organizations on security, and in terms of strengthening that as they go away, in terms of the security postures they want to deploy. So lots of work happening there. The good news is that technology is also sort of evolving and keeping speed with the events and threats which are coming by. But yeah, I guess it's a space which will always be a little bit of a catch up as things evolve. As we become a more connected society, and businesses get even more connected. Securities would have to step up and keep speed with the threats out there. You're on mute, Amol.
Oh, thank you so much. I think this virtual world has taught us, am I audible and you're on mute and unmute. I think these are the 2-3 things going to stay with us all our life. It looks like, even if you go into the normal world. But great, Vijayan. Thank you so much for your inputs. Thank you so much for sharing that security aspects. And I think it's been more than 40-45 minutes since you have been talking. I didn't realize how the time has passed, but it was a meaningful information, some remarkable insights. I'm sure the participants must have enjoyed. I think Anup's point on digital fatigue is a remarkable one, and the core should not be forgotten. That's what, the whole point that Ms. Fernandez mentioned, I think is really remarkable here. So thank you so much, for taking part into ETBFSI Reimagining Next and the Future of BFSI session, and sharing your perspectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And back to Annie, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, Mr. Rai, Ms. Fernandez, and Amol for getting into the detail of the topic. Truly a very informative discussion. Now we'll stop for a short break, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Now I would like to invite Mr. Amit Kumar, partner, Boston Consulting Group, for a keynote speech. This keynote will be followed by a working session on next-gen hybrid work prints, again by Mr. Amit Kumar. Welcome, Mr. Kumar. Platform is all yours.
Thank you so much, Annie, for the opportunity to interact with the learned participants, as well as the great discussion I heard with the panelists. Let me just set the stage in terms of there's a lot of discussion that all of us are having about the future of work. There's a discussion between remote work, there's a discussion between return to office, there's a discussion on the hybrid. What I wanted to do today was essentially take a step back and think through what exactly has changed. And to me, as we think about since industrial revolution, there always has been a correlation between the coordination, collaboration, and co-creation. And we always felt these three will happen only when people are in close proximity. However, the relationship between the time and place, that bond is somewhat shaken right now. And that is leading to what I'll call a spectrum of opportunities. That is what I would want to share my thoughts on. Will be great to get your perspective. As we go through, please feel free to use the chat to share your experiences. What you've experimented will be great to know from all the organizations that you are representing. However, before we go deep into the future of work and hybrid, I think so what is more pertinent is also to realize that there is an additional aspect, additional dimension, which has a huge bearing in terms of how the winners of tomorrow will shape up. If you think about all around us, there is a battle for talent that is happening. A very large number of workforce says that they're actively looking for a new role. And what is important is that they don't talk about a new job. They talk about a new role, they talk about a new position. They fundamentally want to pivot in terms of what they do and how they do. Not surprisingly, and this is based off about 10,000 respondents across countries, not just India. The ability to actually have flexibility in terms of how they work is the number two, just after compensation. So the impact that we will see for some of the decisions that organizations take will be felt for a couple of years to come. If we think about what have we learned in about last 6 quarters, first, of course, about 80+% believe that they're more productive. There is definitely a debate that is that productivity coming out of additional number of hours that are being pulled in. But definitely there is a belief that yes, we have been able to do more than what we usually did. However, if you look at the second column, there's a huge correlation between the social connectivity. So the dimensions of being remote and connected is something where we say needs to coexist, and that is where technology plays a huge role. All the employees, people who believe that their social connectivity is intact, they're able to interact with their friends, with their co-workers, are more productive as compared to people who believe that they're not able to do that well. As people think about what exactly they will value, it is not just the location which is important. They also want to ensure that when they will actually work. And if you realize that there is 90+%, and what this manifests is that, can I take out that 15 minutes when the kid comes home from the school? And in that, I'm actually very happy to spend another hour during the evening. If I get that flexibility to balance the work and the personal life, employees feel that they're able to give best to both the aspects of their life. However, that said, the office is something which continues to play a very important role. So the idea of completely remote for an organization has been thought of in certain pockets, but in general, office will remain the center where the culture, where the organizational identity gets formed, and we'll talk about that a bit more. Of course, there has to be the impact. What we've seen is that, and this is across a range of industries, there is about 5-10% impact that we see on key levers. I mean, the real estate cost is one. Organizations are not rushing to actually reduce that footprint, but they're thinking that how can I continue to grow without investing more in my offices? There are clear aspects of cost optimization by reduction in the voluntary attrition, as well as the recruiting cost that happens. equally important, I mean, if you want to talk about the cost, is what is the outcome that we are getting? What is the efficacy of the input that our employees, our teams are putting in? That has also seen an increase with a rightly most suited model for hybrid. However, there are a couple of challenges that I'll say are yet to be solved. One which is very, very acute is when employees say that they're distracted at home. And this is something which comes in the different life stages. Very, very high in terms of the parents of young children. And I'm sure many of us would have felt the same. This is where a lot of thought has to go as we think about what policies, how do we help our employees perform better rather than being focused on pushing a narrative, a set of rules. What we have realized is that there has to be a framework which is comprehensive enough, which if we print on a paper, we are able to actually get to a 80%, 85% answer. To us, there are 4 dimensions which are important. The first column, of course, is something that we speak about very often, which is how we work. We believe there are 3 other dimensions which we should think about as we think about how we're evolving. To me, how we lead is one of the most important elements. In that, the role of what I'll call first line managers. Those are the individuals who have profound impact in developing the talent, who essentially shape the organizations of tomorrow, how they are evolving and what kind of new capabilities we need to embed in the first line managers is a very, very important aspect. How we organize is all about the structure, but important is the new talent models that are emerging. How do we evolve to take advantage of that? And lastly, we spoke about what we need, and there was a lot of discussion that were happening in terms of previous session on the importance of security, zero trust architecture. The tools, technologies, space, and design will continue to play an important role. What I want to do today in the discussion is that focus on 5 of these. Of course, we'll be happy to talk about rest as well as time permits. Very important, and this is an example of what we've seen as impact, is that the customer relationships that the organizations have actually evolved quite a bit. What that led to is that the established model of interacting with the customers actually changed overnight. Some of the good organizations actually did a clean slate design of their entire customer relationships. Here's an example of an insurer. What they did was that they kept aside their playbook and said, okay, let's look at the data. Who are the employees who are the best sellers when they're working remotely? And interestingly, these were not the same people who were the best when they were doing one-to-one. Next, what they did is that can we enable others to emulate that, which means that we codify all of that, we use certain amount of data analytics to ensure that what kind of focus each sales team member needs to have, and the digital tools equip that. What is interesting is that on an average, they were able to increase the sales opportunity to 80th percentile for the people who were like about 50th percentile. To me, in the time period of about 4 to 5 quarters, that's a huge achievement. What this leads to is that this gives more time for people to actually interact with the customers. It's not always about selling more. It's also about understanding the customer needs better, ensuring that the offers are more personalized. And even if it is not about selling, it is a relationship that continues to manifest in a better lifetime value for the customers. Similarly, if you think about any organization, even in a duopoly, we are very clearly able to articulate the 2 sides, the 2 major competitors. And very often product might be competing, the specification might be similar, but the culture is what defines what distinctiveness is brought to these 2 organizations. And that attracts the set of customers who have a loyal attachment to the brands. It also is equally important for the employees to feel at home. What we feel is that there's something called chain of culture. The chain of culture is something which keeps on getting strengthened as people leave and new people join. It's something which no leader had to think about proactively because this was a mechanism which was working. when the pandemic hit, this chain of culture was pretty strong. If you pick up any organization today, at the minimum 30-35% of the people are new. They never had the chance to participate in that chain of culture. Now the chain is weak. How do we ensure that as we go a hybrid work model, the chain of culture is strong again? Because if that is getting diluted, the very identity of the organization is something that is at the risk. We believe there are 3 key steps the leaders need to focus on. Something which is like very simple as articulation. We've seen the aspirations, the vision document, the mission documents very clearly defined. How do we think about the articulation of the culture that we have? And these are not rules and regulations. This is in terms of how we work on day to day. How do we interact with each other? And ensure that the leaders actually activate in day-to-day life. And lastly, these are linked to how we see our leaders, how we see them growing year on year. Now, this is something which will take some time to be done to stabilize. But to me personally, this is one of the most important elements as we think about the future of work, especially in a hybrid and a remote setting. Third aspect is on the talent models that we see. Typically, what we have seen is the full-time employees is the preferred model. Many organizations also use contractual employees as well as part-time. Right now, as we speak, there is a large on-demand workforce which is available, and they can be available not just as a additional manpower to ride over the busy period, but more importantly, ability to actually get specialized skills which are not available in abundance. Also to look at niche skills which are not available in the region that we're working in. It's very important, and some of the organizations are doing it very, very well, where they're thinking that in my team, as I grow, what are the talent needs which can be sourced from new markets? And there is no bound in terms of the time zone or in terms of the location. What this means is not just the access to better talent pool, but I believe more importantly, better racial and ethnic diversity and gender diversity. To me, those are 2 things which should be pushed very hard as we think about our new talent models. As we think about the space and design, there's a concept of activity-based workplace which is taking shape. I know at least a couple of organizations which are actually redoing their entire office because they believe that they don't need those 100 seats that they have. They'll be happy to have about 60 seats. But rest of the stuff, they actually want to focus on enabling the hybrid work. There are 3 key aspects that we have seen, which is first is what is the collaboration zone, how it is getting shaped up. Just to give you a sense that when everyone is in a room, it's a level playing field. When everyone is remote, it's a level playing field again. However, when we are hybrid, typically it is the remote people who are unable to come into the discussion as actively as others are able to. How do we ensure that that is not happening? That requires specifically focused collaboration zones to be structured. There are certain focus on design, ensuring that there are visual collaboration medium that are available. Similarly, home offices is a big challenge. A lot of organizations, in fact, most of the organizations have invested heavily and supported their employees. But we believe there is still a long way to go to ensure that the flexibility, the efficacy, the comfort of an office is replicated at home office. But overall, this is something which requires a clear thinking as we think about the model of the future. Last, I would want to touch upon the team structures that we spoke about. And there is definitely a plethora of opportunities over there. And what I would do is that maybe just walk you through a couple of examples of how some of the organizations are approaching this. We'll be very keen to hear if you have done similar analysis, what are your findings been? One of the first elements that people look at is that there is a spectrum of opportunities that exist. I'm sure all of us have tried to fit where does our organization lie here. However, what we have found is that the answer actually lies at a team level. And we believe there are 3 key inputs that go into that. First is that the role that an employee is playing, is that ready to be done in a remote environment? For example, innovation is very difficult to be done remotely because you want rapid iteration, you want a collaboration of ideas. Administration, travel bookings, even to some extent analytics is something which can be done to remote environments. That's the input number one. Second is that how do the teams function? If there are teams of 20 people, each one has a very defined role to play, driven by a set of rules, then that team can be distributed. However, if we believe the team actually needs to collaborate on a daily basis, and there is an important handoffs that happen which are not standardized, then that team actually needs to be together. I'll say, going back to the first point, what employees feel is very important. What are employee preferences? If we combine these, you will realize that there are a couple of archetypes that actually emerge which define. What we have seen great organizations do is the 3 boxes are given as tools to the managers so that they have the flexibility to sit down with their teams and decide how they will work for the next 1 or 2 quarters. And that is something which is appreciated by the leaders as well as the employees. However, that creates a new challenge that how do we work together? How do we learn from each other? And we believe there is a definitive need to think about what is the set of practices and routines which will guide the non-remote work as well as remote work. We believe this is an example of what we believe should be the minimum set of activities that should be planned. But important here is the number 2, which is the asynchronous coordination. Typically, we have seen our work to be synchronous, to be linear. Many of those linear processes are today a combination of asynchronous, running parallel, and with frequent touch points. How do we enable that? How do we ensure that the meetings, the daily briefs are very, very set defined and there is no ambiguity? Some of these come naturally to many seasoned leaders, but what we have seen is that there is definitely merit to actually bring in those best practices and share with the wider set of employees as well. It is not just for the managers, because the managers are not available to guide the team members on an hour-to-hour basis. This is something which is shared as the playbook with a wider set of audience as well, which includes our employees. We should also include the partners, whether it is the customers or the vendor partners as well. I'm sure you have all seen this, used it very effectively. Just an example of how asynchronous coordination has come into our lives without us realizing how powerful it is. How we don't need to wait for a comment for a meeting to happen. It could be something as simple as putting it on a chat and the comments come in when we are busy with another meeting. This absolutely is important. This is a fundamental change that has happened. And we believe this is something which will change the way a lot of effort estimation, thinking about the teams is going to happen. This is something which I'll touch upon the last and will be great to hear from you after that, is that the role of a manager from an extractive to a generative is a big shift. Typically, we have seen a manager as someone who will think about the performance management, what is the budget for the team, day-to-day guidance, and some amount of coaching. We believe there are 3 more things that have to happen, and this is, I will say, most important if you have to make it work. First and foremost is show appreciation. If we are remote, the positive reinforcement somehow gets lost. The relationships become a bit dry, they become a bit transactional. How do we codify? How do we make it a muscle memory for people to actually ensure that the team members are feeling happy about their contribution? Second aspect is the team culture and the morale. We spoke about how culture has to be codified, how the managers actually become the custodian and help the team live through those cultural values that the team and the organizations have. And last is the facilitate collaboration through a set of playbooks. I'll stop here, but before as we go, I will just say that this is going to be a journey of many firsts. It is not going to be an answer which will come the first time right. So the rapid iterations will be very, very helpful. Second thing is that just like culture, it will be an individual answer for each organizations. There could be tools, there could be learnings, but at the end of the day, it has to be your answer, which works for your customers and employees. And as one of the industry leaders told me, what works for the customers and employees always works for the organization. That's what I had, but we'll be very eager to hear if you have any questions that I can answer, and definitely appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for such an interesting and insightful session. Now we have a MTC showcase, a day in the life of a professional from industry. I would like to invite Shubham Dubey from Microsoft to share his experience. Over to you, Shubham.
Hey, Annie, thank you so much. Very, warm good evening to everyone. Just for the quick introduction, of course, Annie has given, but just to, give you an insight of what MTC is. My name is Shubham and I'm part of MTC. MTC is an experience center within Microsoft, and we are predominantly on-premises facility. So we basically host customers for our in-person session where we try to tell them all the different art of the possibilities that Microsoft technology can help them with. So in next few minutes, what I'll try to showcase here is I've tried to pick 3 or 4 different personas which are apt in a BFSI industry vertical. And then we're trying to map that with an apt form factor out of the plethora of devices that is there as part of our Surface offering, right? So how these devices are making their life productive, especially considering the hybrid is the way forward, right? So this is the entire intention here. So let us just start with our first persona, which is branch employees. Now, as a branch employee, one of the key asks is to provide a more personal customer experience to the people who are, coming in the branch. Now, to enable customer to kind of interact naturally, this beautiful go-to form factor is being enabled with 10.5-inch pixel sense touch display. Also, you can carry your Surface Go-To around all the day via a lightweight design, just starting at 1.2 lbs. So just imagine somebody who works as a branch employee, and he or she has this sleek little versatile form factor, which is light in weight. Carrying from one place to another is really hassle free. Also with you can go paperless and collect all the digital signatures from your customer using the Surface Pen. And you can also run full featured desktop and mobile applications using a powerful 8th generation Intel Core and Pentium processors. And of course, you also get Windows Pro out of the box. So that really can accentuate and give you that perfect hardware software equilibrium, right? Also, very important, you can safeguard your customers' PII, which is your personal identifiable information, with Windows grade security. And also from chip level point of view, you get a TPM 2.0. So the security is right from your chip to the cloud. Talking about the battery life, this small form factor has a battery life which is almost 10 hours. And the good thing that I really liked about is it almost charges the 85% of battery just about in just about an hour. To have the inclusive meeting experience, blended meeting experience, it is powered by 5.0 megapixel front camera, and at the back you get 8 megapixel rear facing camera, and both of these are full HD cameras, and we also support Windows Hello authentication. Now, I was just going through some of the surveys. It says 99% of the attacks can be mitigated if you enable second factor authentication, and this can be a good option if you want to go the passwordless in the future, right? Also, optionally, you get LTE. So imagine your branches are in remote, villages and areas where Wi-Fi internet is a challenge. Now that's where you can also leverage this LTE advanced features. This form factor also has near field sensor, which is NFC. So this basically can be used to read any of the RFID tags, to track inventory, or even to specific launch specific application for app like experiences. Now, from, let's say, a branch manager, we're moving to a wealth advisor. So a wealth advisor can be someone who is helping the clients plan their future, their financial future. So one thing that is really clear is they are mobile in terms of their entire day-to-day activity. They may be doing some task at their desk for X amount of time, and then they probably would be traveling to client location. So let's see how Pro 7 for business can help their day. Now, talking about Pro 7 Plus, you can closely, again, engage with your clients, and this display which has a classic ultralight 1.7 lbs 2-in-1 device. Now, when I say 2-in-1, what I typically mean is there are two variants. The same form factor has two different modes. One is a tablet mode, another is, of course, your regular laptop mode, right? So the moment you detach the keyboard, so the keyboard that you see here is a detachable one. The moment you detach the keyboard, right, it automatically will pop you a question saying, hey, do you want to get into the tablet mode? And that's where your tablet mode experience starts. But otherwise, if it is there, embedded with your screen, then it will perform duties as in a regular laptop mode. This has also got LTE advanced. So as a sales agent, as a financial advisor, if you're traveling to different location where internet is bandwidth can be a challenge, you can use your cellular, SIMs to basically light up your devices and connect to the internet. You can also run critical enterprise software to find client data and multitask with confidence that you get with the 11th generation core processors. Talking about the display, it has got amazing 12.3 inch pixel sense touch display. You want to do some digital brainstorming. You want to take some digital signatures from your client on the go on the fly. This can be of real use. And one of the really interesting features that I like about this device is the removable SSD for data retention. So you meet your security requirements and also enable devices to be repurposed across all your employees. The configuration for the camera remains the same. This is 5 megapixel front. Rear is 8 megapixel 4K HD display, and the rear one is also enabled with autofocus. So that is also something that you get out of the box with this form factor. And there are a special back case which is available, back support which is available. So in case you're using this in a tablet mode, imagine you're traveling in a local train, right? This really gives you that flexibility to hold it within your hands and perform your activities. Moving forward to the third persona, which is your investment analyst. It could be your investment bankers. Now, usually these bankers and these analysts run very critical applications which requires higher amount of compute, some 3D rendering, right? Some machine learning models and stuff like that. So Book 3 is basically, it is one of the most powerful Surface laptops. You can tackle all the complex analysis, machine learning models, and everything backed by a quad-core, 10-gen Core i7 processors. You can get your job done with the best graphic performance on any Surface laptop. Now, you can, as I mentioned, you can show 3D models, and the screen that you get is of two different variants. It's either 13.5 or a 15-inch touchscreen tablet for your clients, and you can probably explore, rotate, pinch to zoom, and do stuff like that. Also, it has got tight integration with Microsoft Teams and Outlook so that you can communicate with your clients and your colleagues. You can also use Surface Dial to dial on screen for easy access to the drawing tools, to the shortcuts, and other controls. One thing that I really liked about it is I really get that experience of virtual meetings with clients and colleagues with the astonishing details and richness and the depth that you get with the Dolby Atmos sound. And you can detach, you can flip and lower the screen to sort of to work on a graphic intensive portable studio. So these were some of the configurations with respect to the screens and the displays. And talking about the connectivity, it has got USB C type, the modern connectivity, and also you get a USB A type port with full size SD card and optional Surface Dock 2 for a single connector. Talking about maximizing your investment with M365 with the essential foundation and the familiarity of Windows, the protection of Microsoft Endpoint Manager and DCFI, which ensures that the security is there throughout whatever that you do. This form factor is again tested and approved to run all your intensive and business critical applications in a very, very seamless, uninterrupted fashion. The next persona that I'm going to talk about is executive. So for executives, this device, which is Surface Hub 2S, can be a real embellishment for his or her office. What it essentially is, this is an all-in-one, device which has been optimized for personal use. So it has got Windows 10 for Teams. It's a well-curated flavor of Windows, which is there in this Surface Hub 2S. And this is an experience where you can use touch, ink. It also supports Win32 apps and meets the needs of highly regulated industry standards. You can connect securely to your company meetings with native integration with Microsoft Teams and other M365 applications. So usually what you can do is you can present your quarterly earnings and sales figures to the key stakeholder. And since it has got innate integration with Power BI, so you can pull up all your reports, all your documents through OneDrive and just present this in a beautiful 4K screen. So there are two different flavors that you get. One is a 50-inch display. Another is 85-inch display. Talking about the camera, this camera that you see here, it's a 4K front-facing camera. Right, so you can ideate, create diagrams, take notes, because Windows or rather Microsoft Whiteboard is also something that you will get out of the box. And you can convert any space which is more of a focus room, right, to a state-of-art conferencing experience, because we have done integration with Schneider APC battery backups. So you get almost 2.5 hours of battery backup, and there's also a partnership that we have done with the steel case. So this device basically becomes mobile. I can actually move it around within my office, take it to a focus room, and convert that into a collaborative experience. So this was more about one Surface Hub to us. Of course, here's a quick overview of the broader portfolio. So there is a clarity on what we make. We have 2-in-1 devices, as I mentioned, Pro and Pro X, which are very low profile devices that have compute power for demanding workloads, and Surface Go, which is kind of a smaller form factor that is super versatile for commercial customer. Now there are 3 different clamshell devices, which is Book again, which is a super high powered device, and Laptop Go, which is a smaller, lower price laptop that upholds the Surface design aesthetics and the security standard. But it is smaller than laptop and has a less power and or rather a smaller screen. Last category is basically a broad scope, which are our large screen and foldable devices. Now, talking about the different materials that we use, Surface is known for the premium quality. So from inside out, the material used to build Surface devices are chosen after a very rigorous testing. Elements that are critical to internal mechanics, like adhesive and circuitry components, are tested as rigorously as those you can see and touch, like for example screens and the paints and all the fabric. And of course, Microsoft bold environment commitments also help us define the material that we choose. Talking about the components, most of the sub-components used in the Surface are aligned to our sustainability commitment. In fact, most of the devices that you saw are EPEAT Gold, and most of the materials that we use are eco-friendly and are recycled. So with this, I'll just hand it over to the team once again back there. Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure talking to you. Have a good one. Stay safe.
Thank you, Shubhan, for sharing your experience and knowledge with all of us today. Now it's time for a wrap. I would like to invite Amol Dete, editor, ETBFSI, for the closing remarks. Over to you, Amol.
Thank you so much, Annie, once again. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it was a crisp and comprehensive session. Talking about customers is always an integrated part I think everyone should follow in terms of specifically by the BFSI companies or from the BFSI companies. I think today there are 2-3 interesting things that I learned specifically from the panel discussion that I moderated. One is, no matter how much the company should think about digital, or they should overboard digital, whatever it is, I think the core should not be forgotten. Ms. Fernandez, actually Vikshama Fernandez is an MD and CEO of Northern Arc Capital, who said this. Anup Rai, who's heading actually Future Generali India Insurance, he said a very interesting thing that the digital has been everywhere and it's a digital fatigue. And Vijay Rai, the country leader of BFSI segment Microsoft India, spoke something about security, which is very important. So I believe such sessions always help us not only to receive a good content, but help you with whatever happening in the industry, and maybe not just about whatever happening in the industry, but also make you aware about what may happen in the near future. So that panel discussion I think was really meaningful, and I'm sure you must have attended it. By any chance, if you want to watch it again, please click on the watch on demand and you can do that. Apart from that, we also had 2 quick sessions, by Amit Kumar and the other speaker from Boston Consultancy Group, and the Microsoft as well. And I think both the sessions had something interesting about the customer experience and the new way of technologies. And I am sure you must have liked that. So thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into this particular session on reimagining next and the future of BFSI. And thank you so much, dear speakers who joined us and shared their insights here. And I would also like to thank my backend team who has been worked really hard to make this live session happen. Let me tell you honestly, we have been working virtually and doing a lot of sessions, but every time we do a live session virtually, there are always hiccups at the back end, and it's not easy to handle that. But still, we have been doing our best, and with your support and confidence and faith in us, help us to bring more such sessions. So stay tuned to etbfsi.com. Don't forget to log in to etbfsi.com and subscribe to the newsletter of etbfsi.com, which is absolutely for free. It will give you an introduction to the industry at large. And stay connected, stay tuned, and keep taking part into the sessions and the conclaves and the events that we keep on doing. Thank you so much.